Hey guys, my name is Jenna Childers. I work with Jackson Family Wines. We are a family owned and operated company here in the state of California. We're a supplier. We own wineries all over the world. But before I get into Jackson Family and retail pricing and retail marketing, I want to introduce myself so you know who you're listening to today. My name is Jenna Childers, and I am a CHICO State alum. I graduated in 2011 with a psychology major, family relations minor. I worked at Crush in downtown Chico. Loved that. Found that food and beverage was definitely the direction I wanted to take my career. How I found the company was at a career fair. I was networking and fell in love with the recruiter and the organization and building a career at one company and learning how to manage, learning how to sell, and developing relationships in the long-term wine market. So let's kind of hop right into it. I'm going to talk about kind of how wine gets priced. I'm going to share my screen with some great information for you. Production costs, what goes into making a bottle of wine, how it gets priced not only here in California, but in Florida, in China, all over the world, right? So we'll get into that and kind of how we go to market here in California with retail pricing. So give me 1 second and let me share my screen. There we go. Let's start with the very first slide though. Okay. So what I want to talk about here is how Jackson Family is family owned and operated. What does that mean? The family legitimately owns the company, from Barbara Banke to her late husband, Jess Jackson. And what their goals were to be stakeholders across the globe when it comes to producing wine. So Jackson Family owns wineries and land throughout the world. As you can see, we're placed in many different countries. We're all coastal vineyards. And what I loved most about Jess Jackson, I never personally got to meet him, but he was kind of a control freak. So he appreciated owning land, owning a stave mill in France, owning the wineries themselves outright, and producing wine that truly has integrity behind the juice in every bottle. So as we get into that piece of the puzzle, winery operations is a huge cost, right? We'll get into it here more in a moment, but we have a distinct fingerprint on every bottle that's in a store, that's in a restaurant, that comes from the Jackson Family Wines portfolio, which is over 40 wineries around the world. Most of them here in California. Fun fact, we're the second largest landowner in the state of California besides the actual state of California. We own a little over 38,000 acres of land with about 12 of them planted. So we still have a lot of growing to do, no pun intended. But how do we price that so we can make a profit and continue to grow, right? We also own our own stave mill in France and have a partnership in Minnesota, where each of our winemakers at each of our wineries get to handcraft and choose the toast levels of each of their barrels for the wine that their wine gets put into each vintage. We also have our own bottling lines and our own bottle facility. A lot goes into making wine, right? I mean, you wouldn't think about it, but if you own the land, you own the barrels, you own the vines, you have to think about the land itself to buy it and to maintain it, the harvesting hands that go into hand picking the grapes, or the machines that go to pick the grapes, the tanks that the juice gets put into, the glass that the juice gets put into, the corks, the labels, the water to clean all the tanks and the barrels, because water doesn't actually go into making wine. That's for another class. And the cardboard boxes, right? That's a lot of costs that go into being able to sell an actual case of wine. This is kind of a fun fact sheet for you before we go into kind of production and retailing and prices and all that. So as you can see here, about 13 barrels go into 1 acre of land. Jackson Family owns 38,000 acres. That's a lot. I'm not even going to do the math. That's a big number. But we only have about, not even half of that planted. So as you can see, 4 glasses to a bottle, how do we make money, right? When it comes to being in a restaurant or in a retail shop. But let's peel it back here just a smidge. These are 10 of the top countries for selling wines. Amazing that cruise lines can even be one of them. That's not even a country. But here in California, here in the United States, we're a very strong wine market. But as you can see, we are up against some pretty strong countries, right? And for us, it's very important that we're in those different markets. So how do we price the wines that go into these markets, right? So I took 2 of our most popular and dominant wineries and specific varietals and what those prices actually look like in these different countries, right? And this is all based off of the California United States dollar. So as you can see here in California, if you were to go or your parents were to go buy a bottle of KJVR Chard, you're looking at about $15, but there's always a sale, right? You usually see it for about $8.99, $9.99. And why that happens, we will talk about it soon. It's all about distribution costs. And as you can see, if you were to go to China, KJ Chard is going to cost a lot more money. But why? Why does it cost so much more? Well, there are taxes, there are freight costs, there are partnership fees that go into getting the wine from our production facility of KJVR Chard in Monterey County to China, right? Trains, buses, trucks, ships, airplanes, the gas to move those vehicles, all of that costs money, plus the taxes to get from the United States to China to get that case of wine into that market. So a lot of different things go into pricing wine. I'm going to peel it into more of a United States focus to make it a little bit easier for us to understand. So here in California, that's where our own distributor is, Regal Wine Company. Jess Jackson started Regal Wine Company in 1993 to develop his own storytellers and his own distributor in California, which in turn gives us the opportunity to not pay as much to pay another distributor to buy our wine to then distribute it. So in California, we partner with Safeway, Nob Hill Rayleigh's, Ralph's, to sell them large amounts of wine, and then they sell it at their store level. So they're able to get that $7.99, $8.99 price point on their shelf because it's going straight from JFW and Regal to Safeway. It's a pretty streamlined process. But if you look at Florida, if you look at Hawaii, if you look at New York, Texas, Alaska, I mean, all these different states, it costs a lot of money to get wine there. So we've actually partnered with these high volume markets to sell our wine at a semi-decent, affordable price for our consumers. So we've partnered with Southern, with RNDC, throughout the country, different partnerships in different states, so that we can streamline that process as well. So in Florida, Southern's truck will come and pick up a tank full of wine, more like hundreds and hundreds of cases in Santa Rosa, and drive them and or fly them to Florida. So obviously those costs are put into that bottle and what they charge in Florida, right? So how does it get priced? The freight on board. The freight on board is everything that I mentioned earlier that goes into putting that bottle into a cardboard box and then almost into the truck to the location it's going to. So that's the production, that's the helping hands, that's the corks, that's the labels, that's all of it, right? That's the bottle. The freight is the freight that it's on, right? If it's a truck, it's the truck, the gas, the driver. If it's a ship, it's the gas, the shipping fees, all the above. If it's a plane, same thing, right? Plus the tax to get into that state, the tax to get into that country, which equals the cost of goods, right? So if you're thinking, okay, it costs, and I'm just spitting out numbers, there's no validity to this. If it costs $140 to produce a bottle of KJ Chardonnay, and the freight is another $10, and the tax is another $10. That's $160 for the COGS, or cost of goods sold. Cool. Well, now the wine's in Florida, right? For 160. But how are they going to make money? They now need to add margin to that so that when they do sell it to a retailer, they can make some profit. Because they didn't take it all the way from Santa Rosa or Monterey to Florida to not make money, right? So as you can see, that's the cost of the retailer. But the consumer, right? What does that look like? The COGS, the margin, then the retail margin, right? So that's JFW selling it to Southern, then selling it to like a Safeway. There's no Safeway in Florida. Don't know who it is, but a large grocery store. Then the price for the consumer. So everyone's making money on that KJ VR shard, right? So that's how wine is priced. Not just here in California, that's how it gets priced when we ship wine to China, to Korea, to Australia. So that's why when you go to these other markets, if you're like, wow, that wine or that liquor or that beer is so much more expensive, why? Well, here you go. This is why. So as we kind of wrap things up here for you, what I really want to touch on is how we go to market, right? When it comes to, at least here in California, I'm talking about Regal Wine Company, the distributor that Jackson family owns. How do we go to market, making sure that our prices are competitive? We're in a great competitive set. How do we get showcased in grocery stores, right? That's what I hire for. When you're looking at a shelf and you're thinking, okay, how can I save money but get a good bottle of wine, right? There's always the list price, and then there's usually a discounted price if you have a Safeway card, or if you're a member, or if there's a weekly sale on the item, but you're looking for those deals, right? As well as if you're going to go look for, as you can see, case in point, the bottom center photo, it's a line of Pinot, right? You're looking at this line of Pinot and they're all around $15 to $17, but there's one for $7, and you don't know much about wine. You're going to grab that $7 bottle because it's cheaper, right? However, it's extremely important for the consumer to be able to categorize the price points. So you're not going to look for a $100 bottle of Cabernet on the bottom shelf. You know, it's going to be at the top shelf. So you want to categorize them, you know, as you go up in the shelf, that the price points are, they make sense for the consumer. That's very important, as well as how you actually showcase wine for those impulse buyers in a grocery store, right? That's part of your job, is making sure that your pricing and your marketing are in line with the market that you're currently in. So as you can see in the top center photo, the La Crema display, the two La Cremas in the center, higher price point, and the two on the outside are a little bit lower. Most people's focal points go to the very center, and they may steer side to side, but they're probably going to grab one of the Pinots versus the Shards because it's the first thing they see. It's their first point of impact. So that's something to think about, as well as the local market that you're in, right? If you're servicing a territory or a city that is very wealthy, that has a lot of money, you're not going to want to floor and showcase $10 bottles of Chardonnay. I'd shoot for the 30 because they have the finances to buy that wine, right? So making sure that you understand the market that you're in, the price points are in the right places, you're cross merchandising with the season or with the sales in the stores. This is going to really help the store, the market, the region of the area that you're trying to sell wine. So those are some things to think about when it goes into retail pricing and retail marketing in the wine industry. If you have any questions, feel free to ask Kristen and she'll shoot me a note. Have a good day, guys.